Welcome to the debut episode of the Kraken Power Podcast. We're your hosts, Yoshko and Brandon, and in this episode, it's a very special episode because it is the debut. We're going to be talking about the history of Kraken, where we're going to be taking this podcast, and what we're going to be discussing in future podcast episodes. So tune in for this episode. It's going to be a lot of fun, and roll the intro.
Welcome back to the Kraken Power Podcast.
So Yoshko, it's been a while.
It has been a while, Brandon.
The demand has been, there. Like people have been asking, where have you guys been?
Yeah, and also we've been getting random people still watching our old podcast episodes.
Pretty crazy, actually.
Yeah.
Like you look at the spread of like where people are watching. Some people, we have fans in Australia apparently.
Yeah, like New Zealand. There's some even like Europe. It was weird. Yeah, we spread. I think there was some in Asia as well.
Really?
Yeah, like we had like some Singaporeans listening to the podcast.
And Indians.
Yeah, all over the world.
All over the world. Yeah,
The
even when
Vancouver Fitness podcast.
Yeah, even when I went to Quebec to visit some friends, like some friends of friends, they're like, "Oh yeah, dude, you have a podcast." I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah, and I've have some friends in I believe it's Arizona that were listening to the podcast, and they're like, "Yeah, it's just really good information." I was like, "It's called the Vancouver Fitness Podcast." They're like, "Yeah, it's good."
All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. Excited to be back. And in today's episode, we're gonna talk about like how Kraken came to be. But I think one thing or one question that I always get from a lot of people is like, where did you guys get the name?
Yeah, so the name actually is my name.
Yeah.
So that's where it originally came from. Because my name is Kraken, my last name is Kraken, and that's where it originally came from. I was like, let's just call it Kraken, and then let's make it about the sea monster. And then from the very first day, like the conception, it's been about the sea monster, but it just so happens to be my last name as well.
Well, your last name is like Kraken, like
Yeah,
it's
it's-
Krkan.
Yeah.
But obviously to make it easier for everyone to understand, you made it Kraken, like the sea monster, Krken.
Yeah, so I didn't legally change my last name, but in legal documents, it shows both names because I think I've used it so much that like the government recognizes like, hey, this guy is like going by two aliases here.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So we just keep reinforcing it through things like a podcast, and like maybe your kids will have Krken.
Yeah. So that's the base. That's the conception of it. And then it grew so much, and like I'm so happy that we changed that I called it Kraken because it was such a unique name back then, and because we've been calling it Kraken Fitness for the last like 7 years. Prior to that, like I don't even think I had a name. I was just called like Yoshko Kraken, like personal training or something. And but now, because of the Seattle Kraken, it's everybody's like, oh yeah, like did you know that there's a team in Seattle like called Kraken? We're like, yeah, we're very well aware of that.
I get that all the time.
Yeah.
I get that all the time. Like the hockey team, and I go, well, actually, we were actually founded first.
Yeah. Some of our clients have said that they've gone to Seattle and people have been like, hey, where'd you get that sweater from? And they're just wearing like a Kraken Fitness sweater, and they're like, this is actually my gym.
And they're like, oh, they must have copied him.
No.
You know what's funny is
They copied us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another really funny thing is like every year that I've been a part of the company, one of my clients, my friends or family members, they always get me a bottle of Kraken spice rum.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. And no, I love how they're thinking of me, and like they associate me with the name. They're like, Kraken, hey?
Yeah.
Kraken rum? Get it? I'm like, yup, I get it. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's so thoughtful.
Also, there's like a deodorant that's like Kraken Guard Old Spice.
Yeah.
I get people sending me pictures of that, and I'm like, yeah, I know. But in this episode, we're going to be talking about also like the little bit of the history of Kraken as well, because a lot of people I find are kind of like interested in like how we got to where we are right now, which is basically a 5,000 square foot gym that's dedicated to personal training. Like that's all we do here. And so I want to talk a little bit about like where we started and how we got here. So back in 2018, that's when I first started the personal training session. 2016. That's when I first started like the personal training company called Kraken. And it was actually run out of like a mobster's gym here in Vancouver, which is the funniest thing because he was like the weirdest, craziest, like most racist guy ever. But he was actually also very inspiring.
Like all good mobsters.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because like the experiences with him were like extremely aggressive, but then he'd also have like these like hints of like really good life lessons that I needed way back then, and like it was probably like my only source of like inspiration. So between all of the yelling and like all the sketchy things that maybe I've witnessed and that have been going on in the insides of the gym, there were some little nuggets of gold that he incited me with. And so like one of them was I was like really struggling building up these group classes that I was training at the time. And he's like, I was like, oh man, like I just want to stop training like the group classes. And he's like, hey, Yoshko, Rome wasn't built in a day, buddy. And I was like, yeah, Rome wasn't built in a day.
I can imagine him just coming down with like, 5 rings on his hand, just putting his hand on your shoulder, like, hey, Yoshko.
Yeah. Like, oh,
Rome wasn't built in a day. And you're like, yeah, you're right. You're right.
yeah. And so then I ended up continuing training that group class, and then eventually ended up being like one of the more popular group classes in the gym. So that showed me that it's like, if I put in the effort, like eventually it will happen. Like if I just keep pushing towards it, eventually it will happen. And it did happen. And then eventually decided to cut ties with that gym, moved into another gym in like 2018. And this gym was just like a hole in the wall dungeon looking gym. Like it just had like barbells and plates. And I was like, smells like home, at the time.
That's where I want to be. Yeah. Just dirty, but with good weights.
Yeah. And so it had like there was garbage literally on the ground. And inside the like it was so poorly run. It was like the worst run gym I've ever seen. But there was the washroom. There was 2 washrooms. One washroom was like okay cleanliness, like that you'd be willing to like pee inside, The other washroom was like I'm not even kidding, like cans of beer like crumpled on the ground. And then one day I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna clean this and make this washroom usable. And I cleaned the entire washroom, and like the owners, like they didn't even say anything.
Not at all.
Nothing.
They're like, where'd my beer cans go? Thanks a lot.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's what I like. The thing is, what I learned so much from that place. Like looking back, it was such a horrible experience, like working there amongst that crowd.
Yeah.
But it was also really mind opening because then I could see exactly what not to do. And sometimes in life and business, that's what you have to be observing to know what to do.
Yeah, the
It's
Warren
like,
Buffett.
yeah, like don't make those mistakes.
Right.
And so that's why our gym, like if you ever set foot inside, it's extremely clean at all times.
We try.
Yeah,
We try.
I feel like we don't even try that hard. I feel like it's just how it is.
Yeah. I mean, I've been part of other gyms where I'd go down. I'm like, okay, guys, get down on the floor and we're going to do some like planks or something like that. And like before your clients would go down and put their hands on the ground, they'd like be blowing with their mouth, like all the dog hair away. Like,
Yeah.
And just like the mud on the floor just so they can find like a 5 by 5 foot space of like cleanliness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And we don't allow dogs in our gym.
Yeah.
I know
We
there's a
like
lot of-
dogs. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, dogs are great.
Just not in the gym.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, some people just like walking out of the gym with dog hair all over them. I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, inside that gym, it was also like they did allow dogs, which was oftentimes very annoying with like dogs like barking while you're trying to work it
It's
out.
pretty common with a lot of gyms.
Oh, yeah,
actually,
totally.
you know?
But also, that gym was like not friendly. Like nobody would say hi to each other, and you're training your clients, and like no one has said hi to your client other than you. But then because I'm a nice person, I would say hi to everyone's clients.
Right.
And so it's such a weird atmosphere. But yeah, like luckily we learned so much from it. But anyway, so then COVID happened, and luckily I had a way out of the gym. I was like, hey guys, we gotta move, and then we like moved all our stuff, and I found this place that it was just me and my wife. That's it. Like it was just us, and it was like 600 square feet. It was so small, but we just made it happen, and it was getting really popular. We were getting super busy, and then like 2021, yeah. We decided to partner and open a bigger but small location.
Yeah.
Which was 1,200 square feet.
1,200 square feet.
Yeah, so we doubled
including
the size.
the offices and the washroom and everything.
And then I remember having a conversation with you, and I was like, we're just gonna work as personal trainers, and we're not gonna like hire anybody. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It was just like, you make what you make, I make what I make, and this will be it. And I'm like, that sounds great.
yeah, because we were just like super passionate in fitness. And we're like, we just want to help people and just in our own space.
Right.
And then Brennan, our first trainer, approached us, I believe.
Yep.
And he's like, hey, I want to work with you guys. And we're like, holy crap, should we do this? I remember like being like, it was like a super stressful time. We're like, what if he sucks? What if like it doesn't work out? And like,
Well, it was stressful already because we were like in the middle of COVID. And like,
oh yeah.
yeah, like we opened a gym during the middle of COVID. We didn't even know if we were allowed to be open, didn't even allowed if we were going to get closed down next week. But yeah, I always say that we're like, people always say, how'd you get through it? I'm like, oh, we're like Forrest Gump. When there's a big storm and then the shrimp boats are all crashed except for ours, that's basically Kraken. How fitting.
Yeah. We were just steamroller.
Just keep trudging along, just one foot in front of the other, just putting her along. And then before you know it, that's how you get bigger and more successful.
Yeah. It just, I think a lot of people don't realize that just things just take time, and like you just have to just keep going forward.
Yeah.
And there are going to be so many obstacles like we went through, like in COVID.
Right.
But everything was always just fine in the end. And then looking back now, you look at those like things that were stressing you out, and you're like, that stressed me out.
Yeah, I know.
Because you're like, that stuff still happens right now all the time. It's just like, it doesn't stress me out anymore though.
And back then it was like, man, do we need to like close the business down? Like, how are we going to survive through this?
Yeah.
But in retrospect, we're like, oh yeah, we'll just get through it.
Yeah. And everything was always just fine.
Yeah.
But then in 2023, we signed the lease to this new location. Oh, wait, before we dive into that, I want to just mention that in 2022, we were also running the podcast. That was run out of my basement, my unfinished basement. So there's like cobwebs and like spiders everywhere.
And then just draped around with like a tarp to close it off. It's like it's like an episode of Dexter without the murder. It's a podcast instead.
And so now we moved in 2023, we moved into this location and we made a podcast room. Like it's an actual, like this is what this room is just for podcasting.
So we have to bring you guys more podcasts.
Yes. And this gym is 5,000 square feet. So we made big moves all the way until we got to here, and it wasn't without sacrifice and stuff, but it all started from like a mobster's gym to now 5,000 square feet podcast room.
Yeah. And Rome was not built in a day.
Yeah, he was right.
He was right.
But we're 5,000 square feet, but the thing that never changed from the very beginning was personal training.
Yeah.
That's what we do. That's all we're ever going to do. That's what we focus on. So if you're looking for personal training, this is the place.
The only place.
Yeah.
I remember so to give even a little bit more background of like Yoshko and I's like even like upbringing. Like we've known each other since like we've actually had a lot of like intertwinings. Like we went to high school together. And then one of our very first jobs was actually like lifeguarding, and we lifeguarded, within the same city for a long time. But I always say to my clients, my friends, my family, like that's where I learned how to teach. And that directly translated into my, personal training career, my kinesiology career. And I bet you would say something similar too. Yeah. And in a sense where it's like you're trying to teach like 8 kids at the same time versus the one, yes, you do need to be able to juggle a whole bunch, but like if you can funnel all that energy into one, the progress is just so much more than just doing it in a group setting.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that in general, that's what it seems like everybody's kind of going towards, is more like instead of working out by yourself, you're working out in a group, and then you realize the group isn't that good, and then you like go into personal training. And sure, maybe it costs like more money. It obviously is more expensive, but you see the results way faster because that person is just funneling all the knowledge that they've accumulated potentially over like a decade or more into like your personal training session.
Yeah, and being individualized to your situation rather than like 8 to 10 people at the same time.
Like you see so many people doing like all these mobility drills in the gym, and like it's like, but because you know how many times people come in and they're like, my hip flexors are so tight. But we go to test the hip flexors, and the hip flexors are not tight at all, and they're tight everywhere else. They're like, I've been stretching my hip flexors for the last 5 years. And it's like, no wonder you're not making any progress. And that's the thing. When you have a personal trainer or a coach that can just fast track through that knowledge phase and just say like, yeah, your hip flexors are fine. Your glutes are tight.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be doing this in this stretch. And then you're going to obviously see way better results.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. And I remember I had a big mind shift when I was younger too. I was like, I can't imagine like paying someone to like, you know, make me do exercise. Like I already do exercise on my own, but it's like exactly what you said. It's just that fast track way. Like if I could pay someone like $500 to get me to my goal, like within 3 months, why not?
Yeah.
Because then that might take me 3 years. Then I'm not wasting, you know, 2.5 years to get there.
Yeah. I think what's way worse than the cost of losing money is like the cost of losing time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like putting in all of this effort and stuff and then finding out like years later that you're doing it wrong.
Right.
That sucks.
Unlearning it and then learning it back again.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of this. And like also, I've done it in my own life. Like I've paid many professionals just to give me their knowledge quickly, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's why we do personal training, because we see the value in it, and our people around us see the value in it as well. And I don't think that you have to be an absolute beginner to have a personal trainer. I don't think that you have to be somebody who's like very experienced, like potentially even 5 years in the gym working on your own. Because we have tons of people who come in, like physiotherapists and stuff, who train with us, and they still get knowledge from us. It's just that they went in a different route through physiotherapy, you know, like maybe they know a lot about how to diagnose a specific issue, but they don't know how to, you know, have like varying rep ranges and like which exercises to choose for hypertrophy specifically.
Yeah, like
right?
exercise may not be their expertise.
Yeah.
But also too, you may know all the knowledge and how to put it in practicality, but doing it on yourself is also different too.
That's true.
Right? Like
There is the accountability piece.
the accountability piece, but also getting out of your own subjective thoughts and having someone from a different point of view assess you is much different.
Totally. Yeah.
Right?
You're so right.
Like I can have a personal trainer and I'm like in my head, I know what my body should feel like. I know what kind of positioning it is, but like sometimes all it takes is for you to be like, hey, do you know you're like shifting in your squat like that? I'm like, oh, that feels normal to me.
Yeah.
And then you film me and like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay,
Yeah.
let's work on that.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, but our gym is like the motto, or sorry, no, not the slogan that we have in our gym is a gym for people who aren't gym people. And the reason why we chose this is because it's essentially who we're trying to like target, and like the people who we have helped in our gym in the past, like people who wouldn't consider themselves the person who would go into like, I don't know, like a fitness world and like start working out by themselves or anything like that. And like when they go inside, they feel like they don't belong.
Lost, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't imagine yourself walking into a Gold's Gym and feeling like at home.
Yeah.
Right?
So you're like, if you're a person who identifies with that, a gym for people who aren't gym people, like you come to our gym, because that's what our clients say. Like we did a survey with our clients, and I talked to many of them, and they all said the exact same thing. Like, you know, at a gym, I don't feel comfortable. At this gym, I feel comfortable, you know? And that's exactly the type of environment that we wanted to create. And so, yeah, now in that whole market of people who aren't gym people, that's who we're going to be targeting for this podcast as well. So the podcast is made for people who aren't gym people, just like the same way that our gym is made for people who aren't gym people. Where before we were calling it Vancouver Fitness Podcast, and me and you were just bantering and talking about things that we like, which we're still totally going to do in this podcast, but it has to be applicable for our clients as well. So we're not going to go into like super nitty gritty like jujitsu stuff anymore. Well, maybe. Yeah. We'll see where the conversation
Not into the
goes.
weeds. Like it has to be digestible for, you know, the everyday life goer, right? It's like the dad who has a family at home and doesn't have time to pour like, you know, years into a kinesiology degree, you know what I mean? But still wants to get the great results that everyone else can in the gym, right? And they just haven't found a place to get it. Well, you're going to get that here, and you're going to get that at Kraken.
Yeah, exactly. And like there's tons of knowledge out there, and there's people that are way smarter than us for sure. Like you have podcasts with Andrew Huberman and stuff, but that's not applicable to a lot of the people that work in our gym and a lot of people in the world as well. Like, how is optimizing your HRV during sleep going to be applicable to you when like you like don't even know how to fall asleep within an hour,
Yeah.
like so these are the things that we're going to be working on with our podcast, like helping people who are everyday people with their fitness, nutrition, and we're also going to keep the whole biohacking thing inside of this podcast as well, because it's something that me and you are passionate about. So we will for sure be discussing biohacking. But yeah, basically simple nutrition for everyday people, fitness for everyday people, and basic biohacking stuff that works, that's going to give you the most bang for your buck for everyday people.
So I hope you guys stick around for the next few episodes. We intend to have this on a regular basis, where we're going to be able to bring in our own kind of trainers, our own kind of community, allow for you guys to experience the success stories that we've had in our communities, but also give you that practical knowledge for the everyday person. Like I think another one of our models that we're kind of just slowly tethering into is everyday people, extraordinary results. And that's what we intend to apply in this podcast.
But yeah, that's basically it for this podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.
See you in the next one.